One other issue that is also, we've been looking at Parliament for quite a number of things, and I think one of the things that you've done in recent days that a lot of people are excited about, finally, the work of Parliament, if you like, is the work of your committee, the health
We always do the work
committee.
of Parliament.
Yes. but you see, we want to begin to see what we see happening in other places. And when you put a colleague and a minister before you, and you're drilling him like the way that you did, asking the right questions, then, we fall in love with your work.
Thank you.
So please, where are we with that?
Mama V, you see, let me say that this is just one way that Parliament does its work. It is not necessarily about putting anybody or a member just in front of a committee of his own cohort and drilling that person. But we are only doing the job that we were sent there to do, to make sure that things are right. First and foremost also, the inquest into the Sputnik V is under a committee, a special committee. Yes, a select committee.
An ad hoc.
Out of the health
committee.
Okay.
An ad hoc committee. But because it falls directly under our remit in terms of these health issues, we all have an interest in that, and every single Ghanaian. So yes, I mean, the committee has sat throughout the whole of last week and the previous week, trying to find the reasons, the causes, the why, and where we are now, to be able to understand what really prevailed at that time for some decisions to be taken, and what decisions were taken, and what are the effects of these decisions on the country, and it's technically on the health of the Ghanaian, and also, most importantly, the finances of this country, because yes, that is one thing that we are there to protect. The good thing, however, for us, or for me now, is that aside all that may have happened, Ghana actually hasn't lost anything. But there was the possibility, if that is what we would want to say, to maybe have lost something. But most importantly, we also talk about the substance and the form of every matter that arises.
When you say we haven't lost anything, what do you mean? Don't we have some financial obligation we have to meet?
That is when,
because of an initial supply that had come in.
Rather for the supply, the belated supply before he abrogated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, so there's an obligation.
Yes, but that is a supply. If we are not going to gain anything out of what we intend doing in terms of the vaccines, and those monies would have gone waste, that is practical.
But I thought that from your work, I mean, even before the report comes, for those of us who are following, you've already established that there was no contract.
Yes. So, yes. But
so if there was no contract, then whatever was agreed.
Yes. But, Mama V, whatever was agreed was in federals of one, having vaccines to protect the lives of the ordinary Ghanaian. Secondly, Mama V, at that time that these vaccines were being sought for, there was practically none. And that who comes first, and as to how the person comes, the person would then maybe have it. Because the world was in short supply of the vaccine, and the virus was also moving at a certain rate that we could not have anticipated.
Which is well appreciated.
Yes.
I thought the concentration now is the contracts.
Yes, we've established
and
that.
And whether or not there was approval, it's agreed.
Yes, we've established that.
Yeah, so there was no contract.
Yes, but the basis upon which there was no contract, and for the reason...
Is that relevant? Is that relevant? Because of where we have come from. Is that relevant?
It is, and we must place things in context and in proper perspective. Yes, I understand. That is why I was talking about what the substance would be, what the form would be. Would we necessarily always be looking also up to the form, but rather leave the substance out, when indeed the substance is of much more importance and relevance at that prevailing time? Now, we look at where we are now. We are almost at the tail end of July. And practically, we've not even been able to vaccinate about half of the population of what we intend wanting to vaccinate. I'm not saying because of that, we necessarily would have to go in and out there, wanting to take it at anyhow, any place, any what. But the point is that if at that time there was the need for us to go in that manner that we went in, and necessarily not losing as to a quantum that would reflect badly on us, I believe. But going forward, some of these engagements that we are having would also put us in a frame as to how to act when some of these matters crop up again. Because there is always the learning point from where we should be taking our experiences from. situational analysis will give you a room for you to understand and appreciate and as to move forward when need be going forward.
Okay.
So I agree. But going forward...
The committees, this ad hoc committee, have they presented?
No, they haven't.
Their report,
yes,
okay.
They haven't presented their report to the plenary. It would come and we don't have deliberations and their recommendations will be in there.
Sometime this week?
We are looking up to that.
Okay.
We are looking up to that to have that report probably late this week so that we can have a closure on this matter and move forward so that the enhanced protocol, I mean, I don't even see them as an enhanced protocol from the 26th address of the president, but only reinforcing the protocols that we've already set for ourselves.
The protocols that we blatantly disregarded.
And I like it to be blatantly disregarded. Everybody is a culprit in this matter. However, I have always looked at it from another perspective also, that maybe we're trying as much as possible to see how our society, our system could also respond to us going back to our normal activities. But if we have seen that, yes, what have you seen?
Okay.
We cannot,
I like this angle. I didn't think about it.
Yes, because we could not always be what I would want to be placed in the box of not trying to go back into our normal activities and see how society and the system would respond to it.
Okay.
But if we do, and we find that there is a challenge arising out of that, and we probably would want to quell back again and find another strategy of trying to liberate our society, our processes, our economy, and our activities from the shackles of this virus and make sure that society, because when are we going back to that?
I appreciate your analysis, except that we're not like the UK. We've only vaccinated about 20%.
Yes,
even with that, there are people who have just taken the first jab. And
I understand perfectly well.
But it's okay.
I understand perfectly well. I mean, let's be frank with ourselves. Even with the UK, that probably may have had herd immunity. I mean, there's still the prevalence of the virus in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're recording greater numbers. The only significant difference is that they're not getting as sick.
Oh yes, I understand.
Which is,
I mean, in the quest of us even not having the vaccine to immunize our population in the numbers, and if we probably would want to say we are waiting till maybe we've had everything, because there were things that were said that if we do, we'll probably be able to overcome the virus and its spread, even in terms of our diet, in terms of our nutrition, in terms of our normal daily activities and the rest, and we've done all of these things. We probably would have had the opportunity of immunizing ourselves naturally against the virus and be able to move into the space of doing our normal activities and getting back.
Sure.
But we may have hit a slack, we may have hit a block. We probably would have to stand there, find another direction, and moving. What would urge us on now is that we must go by the protocols as already said and now being reinforced. And that we as the people must oblige to these protocols.
Okay, all right.
We must not blatantly also...
I'll come back.
Because, yes, the laws are there. These EIs...
I'll come back to the specific issue of the funerals. And I guess I want to put a spotlight on the Ashanti region. So I'll come back to you. So Dafeamekpor, I started off with the health minister's appearance before this ad hoc committee and when we should expect the reports before the House. But I guess I said that, I mean, there's nothing to debate here. We've already have the precedent sets. If we didn't have a contract and he went outside of it to do anything, and there's an obligation to meet, it shouldn't be on our heads as taxpayers.
Now, I raised this matter after the first day of his appearance, and I told your reporter that it was a developing story.
Yes.
If you recall. The danger we face is that if government is unable to bring the agreement for ratification by Parliament, then we'll have the Waterville and those chain
Vulcan Energy. So what? Go and do the wrong thing and bring it and let's ratify.
No, there's the affairs of state is a very complex thing. So the laws permit
get more.
That yes, the laws permit that you can come back. You are reading law, so so you.
But this is not. Okay, no, well, you go on.
And I have it here, and I have it Article 181 thereabouts.
So this is the lawyer going through the Constitution.
Yeah, you see that it's bleeding in a lot of places. So the law permits that, given the exigencies of the situation, you can always come back to Parliament to have an act ratified. It's just like in contracts. Once there's ratification by the board, then it's regular.
But you know my disappointment, if we've had this issue come up before, and we've set what the right thing to do,
I will address that.
Then why do you repeat it?
No, I will address that. And indeed, in the procurement law, there are provisions that allow you to, without the exception, I think 42 or so is the exception, that you could not do certain things except with the approval of the board. But when you go to 90 or 92, it tells you that you could do it under certain conditions. So even if he proceeded under 90 or 90, section 90, I don't have it clearly, you could have always come back to the board to rectify. That too didn't happen. But they completely forgot that because of the entity they were dealing with, it was an Article 1815 matter, an international transaction, which therefore suggests clearly that we ought to have come to Parliament. Under this COVID matter, and we are still in COVID, they brought a lot of business for us to consider under extreme emergency situations. Some were brought from the villages. We dealt with the issues overnight. And then when Parliament convened at night, we dealt with the matters. By daybreak, we were going back. So it was possible for this to have been done. Even when he didn't do it, we were hoping that we would have taken steps. And you know why we got here? It was because members kept asking questions. When they filed the question and he comes, it was his conduct. Look, between January, we wouldn't have gotten here. But his attitude to the members of the House, he will come and answer and will give an offhanded answer. So members so they said, well, then we'll have to do this. It was because of his attitude. The attitude was simply wrong. If his posture on the matter, like he was before the committee, if that were his posture before the House when he was answering questions, I think members would have ended the issue. But he won't give details. He won't give anything. Meanwhile, when these vaccines came, you met the vaccine at the airport with fanfare, with traditional drums.
We gave live broadcasts.
Yes. I think that day when the studios here, I think I was here with Japan Meza or so. And the fan. So, yes, we were under emergency, but you had time to do some of these things. So you still had time to be able to have done the thing properly in law. But like Kwesi said, it was under emergency. He played on our emotions that people were dying. 78 people are dying.
Oh, but I still insist. It's not like people were dropping dead
hold on.
every day.
Hold on. But my rebuttal to that is that was not when COVID struck. COVID has struck as far back as January 2020. We got locked down by March 2020.
11th March.
So, and we had lived with COVID, we had been managing. So you could not be raising, and for 2020 alone, the number of persons who had died from COVID was very high. So you can't say that because of this in February, you had to do this without recourse to the proper procedure. That is where his problem lies.
Do you get a sense, just finally on this matter, that, ordinary Ghanaians, we've been very disappointed with the kind of truth that we were hit with, especially because, and this is not, I guess people are not even trying to get personal, but we're just looking at the caliber of the person who is the health minister, the kind of background where he comes from. And so if he explains to us
exactly
that because of the situation...
you see, people, this is a man who had chaired the public accounts for long and scrutinized other public officers. So it's the attitude. It's the same attitude he demonstrated when members asked questions about the KIA testing. And because of that, other members have filed another motion that is yet to be taken for a similar process to be conducted. So you alone.
I'm wondering, will the lessons be learned so that, going forward, he's more open and answers questions so that we don't get to this point?
I think he looks more remorseful now, but I hope that it was not because of the inquiry. Because if the motion for an inquiry to be conducted into the award and the operations of the Frontiers Agreement is also eventually taken and established, and they begin their work. Look, it took about the 17th minister for us to appreciate the fact that an agreement has indeed been signed. Every single person who appeared before appointments committee said they didn't know. They had no idea. But the people were working. And particularly given the nature, the terms of the agreement, so much revenue, the state is getting only 10%. So
is that to say we would see is it the transport minister appear before an ad hoc committee, just like we've seen with the health?
That's the motion.
Okay,
that's what the motion says.
We like it when you guys do this, so keep doing it, I guess. But just your thoughts on this last one.
I think the job of Parliament in trying to make these inquests necessarily, I'm not saying my brother has just placed value on the attitude of a person. That is why this would have gone. If we make that a point as to why we've got into what
a public officer.
Yes, I understand, but it should not be said that because of his attitude, that is why we've got into where we've got into. Because if
I think the questions were asked.
I understand.
And the answers were so inadequate.
Okay, so yes. I'm curious to know what
so because if you say it's because of the person's attitude, necessarily, the ordinary person casually hearing this answer with me, if the person had initially come and said that and been what you would have wished the person to have been in terms of demeanor.
Answers.
Yeah, no, sure. Please allow me. So, not enough answers, basically. So we had to come to
probably.
this.
Then if you say so, that there were not enough answers, that is why we've gone the full. I would then appreciate that. Because now we all need answers. We all need to know what the processes are. And for somebody, just as you have said, who had sat in the Public Accounts Committee as the chairman for a very long time, would appreciate and understand that for every single activity that I engage myself in, would also come.
He's an economic statistician.
Yes.
So being a deputy minister of finance.
Perfect. So he understands that. So it isn't the case that he probably was not forthcoming with the answers that he needed to come up with initially. But maybe as time goes on, things would start unraveling well and sitting well with him, and for him to get the appreciating understanding, moving away from the contingencies at that time, that those decisions were taken, for the answers to be produced and procured and given out in the manner that is being given out now.
There's another school of thoughts that suggests that, seek to suggest that this is not entirely on his head. He's probably taking it on behalf of some other people. That this is not his doing necessarily.
I mean, we are just trying to stretch it, and probably, just as you said, you would want us to be doing what you see being done now as to be the job. I probably don't know what those individuals might be saying, and probably on whose head and what. I mean, the answers that are coming are the answers going in answering the questions that are being asked, or is there the cause for us then to also be moving elsewhere and probing those places again? Probably those are what I believe should be asked. But now, as I sit, the answers as the committee is also sitting, and from where my committee is also watching from, I probably feel like we are all getting to a consensus as to what happened and the way forward.
Okay.
If I may say this.
Real quick.
You see, as at that time that he engaged these people, he wasn't a minister of state. The president at the time had sent all of them as his representatives, even including the minister of finance. They were all acting in the capacity.
Not even the minister of finance.
Yes,
Charles Edubwa, he was acting then.
No, he was simply the president's representative.
Exactly.
All of them were acting in a representative capacity for the president. You understand? So, and there was no cabinet. So I even made a point after his appearance that if he could produce an executive approval letter, normally authored by the executive secretary to the president, would have addressed some of these matters. But so far, he's not been able to to adduce any such evidence. You understand? So, yes, they got confirmed later. Cabinet subsequently got formed. So all of these things was directly being done from the presidency through their representatives. But you still needed executive approval to be able to do some of these things.
Well, okay, just the last bit. I'm not sure we have a lot of time to deal with this, but yesterday, your parts, the ranking member, particularly on finance, Kesalato Forcing, did some presentation. This is the first of the maiden edition of the Ranking Members Forums series, Policy Dialogues. That's quite a mouthful. No. Ranking Members Forums series of Policy Dialogues in Accra. Well, but let's come to what he said, essentially accusing the government of reckless borrowing and poor fiscal mismanagements. He's warning of possible neglects of the country by both the bond and domestic markets if the governments fail to act immediately to address the prevailing situation. And here's a quote: "We submit that failure by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government to do so as recommended will mean that within 18 months from today, Ghana will be exposed to a high risk of default of its debt service obligation, which will plunge this country into a deeper economic crisis. They should not wait until disaster strikes and we default on our debt service obligation before taking the necessary actions, as this will weaken our position to negotiate favorably." First of all, a forum like this is welcoming, isn't it?
Yes, Mama B. But however, at the end of the day, if the forum fails to, in my view, prescribe what the solution is there for.
Oh, isn't that just what I
mean, all that you said, if they don't take the necessary precautionary, and what are those necessary precautionary measures? You see, I believe that in some of these things, either if it's for academic purposes, there must be certain specific recommendations that you also believe will be able to stem the tide of what you seem as wrong. I don't have a problem when we have these dialogue, because it's in furtherance of this country's good governance and going for it and making sure that all that we are doing sinks well for the prosperity of this country. But it should not also be seen or be done in a manner that would want to seem to other individuals on analysis, as we are trying as much as possible to have something to say to make it feel like they are not working, or to be seen like they are not working and they cannot do the job, and therefore we score certain political points. If you really mean that we would want to have these things set out, I mean, one thing that I read is that 18 months from now, if that is why the government is in place. That is why the government has policies and programs that would gear towards alleviating some of these things. He pointed to a point where our tax to debt servicing ratio increased to over 600 out of 400 and something. That was, say, in 2019. And probably, I mean, fair deal. The year 2020, he has always also in his argument and in his presentation said, we probably should not be using that year and its incidence of COVID as a means of trying to explain some of these matters. But in any government's view, and trying to put in place certain investment that would be able to help the country propel, would obviously do that where you have a dip in some of these figures, so that these figures would therefore rationalize themselves up when these investments are taking shape. But when you are hit by a process that will halt these investments, these activities and programs, for it to take shape so that it can recover the investment cost that you've already made, you are going to face some of these challenges in the shorter to medium term. But the approach that you again do to make sure that it recovers itself of all the investment vis-a-vis the problems and the challenges that has occurred is what we are all looking at, and that is what the government is in place doing now. And I can assure him and assure all the other members of the NDC and the people who particularly were involved in this process that we are not going to even get to that 18 months of their prediction, but to see a recovery of the economy as it's being recovered now, for us to move forward and make this country prosper. So I would urge them to be at rest. We take every recommendation and every presentation and every discussion in good faith.
Okay.
And yes, we are poised to make sure that we move this country in the right direction. Yeah.